Hello, my name's Eric Rios, and today I'll be talking about the intrinsic issues in AI reproduction. So the first article I'll be discussing is written by Will Douglas Heaven. It's called AI is Wrestling with the Replication Crisis. This article tackles the intrinsic problems involved in replicating modern AI and the implications of these problems. To briefly explain the surface level benefit of replicating AI, this process allows AI to be verified in different environments, pushing the advancement and refinement of the specific AI, and thus making it more useful for real-world applications. The article emphasizes the point that we increasingly see more and more studies by technological institutes that describe some type of revolutionary AI, but do not provide the code or the methods that were used to reach the results. The main offender the article exemplifies is an AI technology by Google Health that detects signs of breast cancer in medical images, citing a response to the study from 31 dissatisfied scientists due to the lack of transparency in the study. Since AI is a relatively new concept in technology, the kinks in how it works and how it should be presented are still being ironed out. Many new types of AI suffer from a black box problem in which it is extremely difficult or even impossible to say how or why a model produces the results that it does. Now, there are three major components in the way of AI being reproduced the way that it should, these being code, data, and hardware. As little as 15% of AI published studies share their code. Data in these studies can often carry sensitive information and therefore cannot be disclosed. And hardware for the most field advancing AIs can cost upwards of millions, even billions of dollars. These obstacles draw a blurry line for a seemingly simple problem, but there are solutions to potentially look forward to. These include projects that push for checklists when researchers publish their studies to make sure they include code. For sensitive data, researchers are encouraged to provide a means of producing similar data sets to the ones that they used. Hardware costs are difficult to navigate, but there is a trend with most AIs where, as time goes on, they become more efficient and easier to replicate on more accessible machines. Now, the other article I chose to analyze is written by Gregory Barber and is titled Artificial Intelligence Confronts a Reproducibility Crisis. The second article makes most of the points of the first article and agrees entirely with its premise, so I won't go over those portions. However, it took a different, more hands-on approach in describing the difficulties in AI reproduction. It describes how Joel Pinu, a computer science professor at McGill, who was a prominent figure in the first article as well, was working with students on an AI algorithm meant as a prerequisite for automated driving. The class noticed that despite using the code provided by the lab that successfully put out the research, the model was not working as intended. That is until the students started tinkering and manipulating the code, then magically the model began working as intended. Of course, the lab that published these findings made no mentions of the required tweaks that made the model behave accordingly, showcasing the difficulties in the black box nature of AIs. This touches on another issue in AI reproduction, in that reproducing results is often not compensated, and therefore there's not as much motivation behind it. A solution the article produces is pushing this reproductive work onto students. Now, as far as how ethics and ethical frameworks relate to the articles and AI reproduction as a topic as a whole, I can see elements of utilitarianism and virtue ethics. Utilitarianism desires the outcome with the greatest overall utility, which in my opinion ties into the need for transparency in AI models for the overall benefit of that specific AI and the people that it will affect. If measures are put into place to hold researchers to higher standards in transparency, this will cause a trickle effect that can benefit more people and thus boost utility all around. I can also see how virtue ethics ties into this issue in that virtues of honesty and transparency are very prevalent. When big companies like Google Health choose to keep their AI a mystery, there is a sense of greed or even malevolence in their actions, in contrast to what the article is pushing for with good virtues like honesty. I'd like to end this slide by saying I personally agree with the points both these articles made, especially in the context of the ethical frameworks I related to them. Now, finally, these are the two discussion questions I'd like to pose to you all. The first touching at the main issue of AI reproducibility. This being one, if tech companies or researchers have legitimate reasons for withholding information about their AI models, such as use of proprietary code or sensitive data, do you feel they have a moral and/or ethical obligation to either release this information or provide ways to replicate this information? And second, what would you say about the legitimacy in tech companies releasing publications about advanced AI technology without providing any methodology of how the results were attained or how the system works? And should they be able to do this? Thanks for watching. I look forward to the discussion these questions stir. Thank you.